Keran, welcome to Future Proof.
Thank you. Good to be here.
You are the Futurist In Residence at MYOB, is that correct?
I am indeed.
Now, I reckon plenty of people would be extremely curious around what the hell does a futurist do? I mean, it's such a great title. It sounds really cool.
Yep.
But it's only evolved, really, like become a thing in the last few years.
It really has. And the way I describe it is about demystifying technology, or tomorrow's technology, but today. What does that mean? You know, look, so many people will be out there and they talk about what blockchain or artificial intelligence or machine learning can mean from a tech point of view. I mean, that's cool and all. What does it mean for me? What does it mean for a person? What does it mean for a business? And that's what I like to do. So for me, Futurist in Residence is all about taking that future story and applying it to the people behind it.
So you get to play with cool gadgets every day and get to take them home and hang out with your kids and play with them with your kids?
Absolutely, I do. Yep.
So talk to us a little bit around, I suppose, what's got you excited at the moment in the world of technology?
Look, the big thing for me at the moment is probably two factors. One is voice. Voice interfaces, from a pure tech point of view, it's the next thing that's just happening so fast is how do you get access to data where you need it as quickly as possible? So, for example, at home, I do have access to Google Home, Apple HomePod, and Alexa. Alexa's the one that I like. And watching the kids in the way that they just assume that knowledge is around them. So we'll be sitting having a conversation. They'll want to know something. And if I don't have the answer for them, which most dads don't have the answers, they'll just turn around and go, Alexa, what is blah, 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 blah? And wherever we are in the house, Alexa will then respond and tell them the answer. And they just become so used to this idea of asking questions, right? And looking for answers. Now, my wife and I do wrestle with that immediacy of the answers and that laziness of going, I'll just ask Google or just ask Alexa. So there is a wrestle there with that. But I still love that idea of fostering innovation and curiosity.
It's funny, I called up this morning to cancel a credit card and they asked me if I would allow voice recognition to be used for security purposes going forward. And I was like, hell yes, this is great.
Absolutely.
How easy is it? Because no one can replicate hopefully, hackers can.
Actually, surprisingly, it's not too hard
No.
to do some of that.
I do get excited. So tell me a little bit then about the technology that's got you a little bit disturbed.
I think in the same vein, voice, as we just touched on, the ubiquitous of technology into our lives. There's a fear of data security. So one of the other things I was going to say there was that the second part of what's got me excited is the simplicity of getting access to things. APIs now are everywhere and are so easy to get access to stuff. There's tools that allow myself and my kids to actually build some of these voice interfaces. But with that comes a relaxing and a sharing of all this data. And we're seeing loads of data issues all around the world. And so this fear of, I've got access to this stuff, but what responsibility do I have as a technologist to looking after that data on behalf of somebody else? And the next generation of developers coming through, be it young kids who are hacking on stuff, or be it a 21, 22-year-old who's just fresh out of university, do they have that same insight into protection of data? That's a big concern for me around the future of technology and where we're going is that privacy and data component.
So, and there's huge space in ethics around that, isn't there, in terms of who is actually going to, pre-foresee the ethical dilemmas, which are beyond a scale I think we've ever dealt with. Who is going to, preempt and potentially, put in place policies to protect us? Whereas I don't know what you're seeing, but at the moment I'm not seeing a lot of proactiveness in that space. It kind of ends up at the decision-making hands of the people developing the technology, and then we wait until the dilemma is faced before we actually deal with it.
Yeah, and it's interesting. We're seeing that sort of philosophy in a lot of places. I was at APAC Blockchain last week, and of course one of the hot topics there was regulation and standards. It's exactly the same in this sort of space. And someone asked a question around FTSE, the London Stock Exchange. Why have they not followed what the ASICs have done, that's the Australian Stock Exchange, in going to blockchain technology? And their answer was because there's no standards there. There's no regulation in place yet for the data. And so the follow-up question was, well, whose responsibility is it? Is it the government's responsibility? And the the overwhelming message that came out of this entire event was that standards shouldn't necessarily be dictated by the government. They will come out of the people creating the technology. We've seen it before, VHS and Beta. They both came out of the two companies driving that technology forward. Yeah. And then the market says, okay, we're going to settle in on become one. And I think we'll see the same sort of thing in this sort of space. Now, there is a place for governments and OECD and all these other players to come in and have a voice. Whereas the OECD explained at this event was they facilitate communication. So let's get everybody together to talk about the impacts and the pros and the cons and all these different bits and pieces. But you're right. The underlying ideas of the regulation and the standards will come from the people actually creating the technology themselves.
Which, if they're, driven by the right values, is great. But as we've seen in the past, not necessarily the case. I mean, I found a video on the weekend with one of the original people involved in the development of Facebook. Have you seen this video?
Maybe not.
And basically, he's left, but now he basically speaks about the fact that, that the founders of Facebook knew damn well what they were doing when they created it. Yeah. And their whole intent, they knew how it stimulated the mind. Their whole intent was to keep you on Facebook as much as they possibly could. Totally. And there's a lot of speculation that, social media is not that different to drugs, alcohol, cigarette companies. Yep. And now, it's great now because we're all addicted. It's like, how do you actually disconnect people and how do you start to overlay the ethics? I mean, the only thing you can do is switch it off. Yeah. But we're not going to do that, are we?
No, we're not, because there's a whole thing at the moment, right, around the whole sharing of data on Facebook and people saying, oh, just turn it off. But then there's a whole kickback of people saying, but that's the way I keep my family overseas. Yes. The fundamentals of connecting with people is what Facebook and these sort of technologies was all about. But you're right, we are in this world where a handful of people control this effectively walled garden of access to what we see.
Everybody's
lives, and Facebook is well known for running experiments to say, can we manipulate people's psyche? Can we change the way someone feels by manipulating what's in their feed? And of course the answer is absolutely you can. Instagram, Twitter, they all do it to some sort of degree. And the idea of these groups controlling that data and manipulating it in ways, it's as scary as all heck. But at the same time, it's exciting too, because there's so much potential there for the right, in the right spaces.
Yeah. And I think at the end of the day, it's whether you're consciously aware of what can be done. I think that a lot of consumers aren't consciously aware.
No, they're not.
So talk to me, you've got young children
yes.
as well. So how are you helping, I suppose, a lot of people come to the work that I do because of two reasons. They're worried about being left behind, so they want to future-proof themselves, or they're worried about what their kids are going to do in a world where AI and robotics does the bulk of the work. So you've got young children, you're in this space. How are you helping your young kids future-proof?
That's a great question. And the short answer is, I don't know. I really don't know. So what do I do? Well, I'm in... we touched on it earlier. I get to play with technology. So my kids get to play with it right from the start. I mean, they had access to Google Glass. They had all this sort of stuff as soon as I've got access to it. And I let them play with it and experience it. And so for that point of view, it's great. But also, my wife and I... we turn technology off a lot. In fact, I love my wife to bits, but she's one of those people who just turns everything off at the wall. So whenever I want to turn the TV on, I've got to go back to the wall and turn it on. So we live in that space. Now, that also means that the kids are outside climbing trees, painting pictures, making pottery, doing art classes. So for me, setting them up for success for tomorrow is actually fostering creativity, fostering curiosity. We were talking earlier about the idea of do you give kids the answer or do you foster their discovery of the solution? Now, I'm not the best at that by any stretch of imagination. There are still times when I sit down and say the answer is blah, 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 blah. There are other times where I sit there and say, well, what do you think? How do we get to that point with you? So it's about conversation, it's about curiosity, and it's about exploration together. And I think the other thing as well, and this is something I probably picked up from my father, was complete openness and going, I don't know the answer. Why don't we explore this together?
Yeah, not the old days where we used to just make it up and hope that it never came up again. Well, we didn't, our parents did.
Yeah.
So you're, to close this out, you're roughly around my age, yeah? Sort of around 40.
Yes.
And obviously there are a lot of people from our generation that are not in the space that we're in and are fearful of the future. So what sort of advice would you have to someone that's kind of middle-aged, that's kind of fearful of tech and AI and what's coming? What advice would you have for them in the context of future-proofing, remaining relevant and doing something that they actually enjoy?
So it's a great one. I spend a lot of time with mums groups, actually. My wife's plugged into a lot of mums groups, and so a lot of them are not plugged in every day like I am. And so the first part is have a conversation. Have a conversation with your significant partner and find out where you sit. And openly say, we don't know this together, so let's go and explore what we can do. The other one is actually don't be scared of it. I don't think there's a reason to be scared of the future. In fact, I think it's an incredible opportunity. It's an amazing opportunity for anybody coming back into the workforce to learn new stuff. The openness of companies these days to bring people in and to say, actually, we're going to walk with you. We're going to support you and take you through places. Is an incredible sort of space. So the fact that people are talking more these days, be it digital, be it face-to-face, is happening more. There's a willingness to say, actually, I don't know, and explore together. But I think that idea of, am I scared of what's coming? No. But be aware of what it is, and if it's a parent talking to a family, then have the conversation with your kids a lot more about what's there. There are amazing technologies. Koala, for example, if you want to protect your home, put a koala on your internet, and you can monitor what the kids are doing, and then have a conversation with them. There are tools like that around, so you can embrace tech in these places. I think the best thing is just to sit down and explore it, look at what's happening, but don't listen to the media. The media sell on negativity, and so don't listen to the media. Look at what the opportunities are, and have a conversation and see how does it fit with your character and where you want to be in the future.
I totally agree with you. I mean, I'll constantly say I think we are at this unique point in time where we can reconceptualise what work and life looks like. And we're so attached to what it's looked like in the past that we're fearful of letting it go. Yep. But the reality is we can actually make it whatever we want. And we've got the tools and technology to do that.
Definitely can.
But if you don't step into that space, you're
Totally.
going to continue to be fearful.
Totally. Yeah, exactly that. And I'm constantly with the kids saying, or with my wife saying, how do I foster in my kids that they don't have to work a 9-to-5 job, right? I don't have the answer yet because they're still young, but maybe one day they'll have different ways of working to support themselves.
Thank you very much for joining us at Future Proof.
No worries. It's great to be here.
Cheers.